Hey, 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 welcome back to Goals and Greatness Podcast, your weekly dose of business banter, big ideas, epic fails, and the systems that make the dream work. With your favorite duo, Kat and Lou.
Double the expertise, double the fun. I'm Lou, your navigator on this wild ride of risk-taking and rule-breaking.
And I'm Kat, your go-to guru for all things startup. Together, we're unzipping the secrets of success and taking you behind the scenes of our crazy world.
Whether you're a CEO in the making or you've just scribbled your first business plan on a napkin, we're here to fuel that fire and help you unleash your greatness to achieve those big, bold goals.
So entrepreneurs, visionaries, and everyone in between, get ready to join the ride with Kat and Lou. Let's turn up the volume and unleash your greatness.
Here we are. We're back.
Your favorite duo. What?
Huh?
Want to throw that in. Just your favorite duo.
Yeah, your favorite duo. No, I just want to say I hope everybody had a nice Easter weekend with the fam. It was great to be in Texas. So great to see you.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, we have a meaty topic today, so I don't want to waste any time on this.
Agreed.
On this this audio nectar from the gods.
Yes.
Personal growth. Hot topic, always a hot topic, buzzword all around, but what is personal growth even, Cathy? Give us a little something there.
Oh, okay. Well, I can give you the proper definition. No.
Give it to us.
It's really, I remember hearing this younger, like, oh, personal growth. And I'm like, what the heck does that mean? And so if you're listening in and you're like, I've kind of thought the same thing, personal growth, and I always hear about personal growth and development. And it's really as simple as it's the ongoing process of self-improvement, and so really looking at, the different aspects of your life and like, how can I get better? How can I improve? That's it. Like, that's what it is. So it really, I think is the natural human route. We were made to evolve, right? But when people say I dive into personal growth and development, I feel like it's more of like, I'm intentional about making sure this is happening versus just like leaving it to chance, right? And so they're taking initiative to say, I'm going to take my life in my reins. I know I want to grow. I know I want to be better. I know I want to be aware. And so, they dive into that. And so when was personal growth first introduced to you in your world?
So I used to say Cutco, but upon further examination, I realized that, my sense of self-awareness and just like analyzing and examining my life came before that in more of a religious setting. So was more under the, I guess, format or guide of like, sins and not sins, or like what follows with, the religion I was raised in and what doesn't. But it was never maybe as hardcore as some of these crazy documentaries that you've seen. It was actually very innocent even at times, and very pure, like, in the Catholic faith, when you're around 7 to 9 years old, you do like your first communion, and what precedes that is like your first penance. So like what people know as like the traditional like, screen confession, go in, tell somebody your sins and come out. But before that, what they taught us to do is an examination of conscience. And you basically go through a format of questions that helps you examine what you've done up to that point. And I think that self-awareness is like the root of personal development, like knowing yourself and being able to be honest with yourself. So I would say that those things open the door for my mind to be open to looking inward, because some people, the first time they hear of personal development, their first reaction is like, well, not me. Well, no, that's not me. I don't do that or this or whatever. But I think because I came into it with this habit of self-examination, that's when I feel like I was first introduced, and then more heavily in high school, because I went to an all-girls school, and we actually, in a lot of our theology classes, we focused on studying different philosophers, and they just did a really great job of helping us think more about the people, the women that we wanted to become. And whether it was in a more religious setting or not, I think was irrelevant. It was more about again the self-awareness. So that's when I was first introduced. And then when I got to Cutco, that's when I first started hearing about the gurus of like personal development and like Tony Robbins and all that stuff. And I think that's when I became definitely more intentional, but I feel like I was exposed to some of the like whisperings of it early on. What about
Mhm.
for you?
That makes sense. I never thought about it like that, actually. Because I would probably say very similar, but what's vivid for me was like that term. I first heard that term in Cutco,
Mm.
and they're like, what are you doing for personal growth and development? I'm like, what the hell does that mean? Right? Like, that was me at 19. I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And, I was introduced to Brian Tracy and John Maxwell and Tony Robbins and, just other really incredible, people, Jack Canfield, and just learning about the power of the mind and how much we really get to control things. And I don't know, I don't like saying it like that, because we also like are not in control. The universe has so much going on, but really understanding that what we focus on expands, and what we're putting out there, we're going to see more. And what lens we put on, right? If we're always complaining about something or doing something, we're putting that lens on, we see more of that. Meaning, if we put on a gratitude lens, we're like, oh, I'm so grateful for this and that. Like, it's like your brain's like looking for more things throughout the day to be grateful for. Or if I'm like, what the fuck, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, which was me last year at some points. I was like, what am I doing? I just kept finding more wrong shit. My brain was looking for everything that was going wrong, right? And so that's where I was like understanding, like, wow, what I focus on, what I say, my language, like all these things matter. And I have control as to what meaning I give things, right? I have control as to the interpretations, because I'm whatever's happening is happening, but I'm the one creating the story, right? And so I can just say this happened here, or like, oh, this did this, and da da da. We're creating that story. So it was really interesting to hear that, because I never thought about that. It was just kind of like, woe is me or whatever, or like, like this, I think I grew up around people that loved God and prayed, but also it was this like, it is what it is. We do the best with what we have and try not to complain, but it wasn't this like, God has given you the ability to do so much. And if you lean in and, focus on these things or whatever, you can be better. Right. So anyway, as far as personal growth, so for you, when you became more aware, I'd love to share and talk about like just some of the things that helped you on your journey for personal growth and development. More than happy to share mine, because it's been a constant thing since I was 19. I'm turning 42 this year in a couple months, and it's something that I know will be a forever part of my life. In the times like last year where I wasn't reading, where I wasn't like stuff that I would normally do, I found myself feeling really stuck, right? And leaning back into some of these habits, practices, has really rejuvenated my soul and reminded me of like the power of leaning into these different types of things. So yeah, I'd love to hear some of the stuff that's really been helpful for you, and more than happy to share anything of mine.
Yeah, I just want to preface by saying like everybody is forever on a journey. Like, nobody's perfect,
Yeah,
and it's just
100%.
either are you working. The biggest question, especially when you listen to people talk about it, like I know people's first thing is like when I hear people talking about personal growth is they want to go find the dirt on the person, and they want to be like, well, why is this person not that? Or like, why do I need to listen to them? Or and so I just want to tell people like I don't have all the answers. Cathy doesn't have all the answers, and nobody's perfect. The biggest question just becomes, is somebody working on it or not? And that's really what personal growth is. And to go back to your question of how was I introduced, if I continue working on it and all that stuff, I think for me, when I first got into Cutco and I started having more of a focus on it, I was introduced to like John Maxwell and like his books, and I think that was a great starting point for me because all his stuff is like really plain English language type. Like he doesn't use a lot of the buzzwords, so it was really digestible, easily digestible for me. And I just started listening to Minute with Maxwell every day. It was just as simple as like I put my email in, I subscribed, and I would receive it every day. And it was 1 minute, and I would listen to it, and that graduated into, instead of it coming to me, then I started seeking out YouTube videos and like watching Tony and stuff. And 2014 was a really big year because I actually attended UPW with you, so that was 10 years ago now. And
Wow.
yeah, it was a long time ago now. So that was kind of like a big event because it was the first time that I had actually invested money and time, a lot of time, into something of that, and also being in a room full of people like that, because
Right.
it's different than when you're at Cutco and you have a mixture of people just being introduced, maybe not like super about it, but you get there and within 20 minutes, I feel like everybody in the room is sold, and you're in
Mhm.
a room full of people that all have like similar goals. So that was like a really big event for me. And I remember that in high school we would have, spiritual retreats and stuff like that, and they always used to tell us, you're going to have a high after the retreat and it's going to fade and this is what you do.
Mhm.
And every time, it would. And I remember after the Tony thing, I remember thinking to myself, don't let this be just a high. Like, you invest all this time, all this money, all this energy, like keep it going. And I feel like those first couple years I really had to be really intentional almost daily about it, like whether reading something or um, just putting thought into every action or every reaction. And then eventually it just like becomes part of your lifestyle. I don't know if it's the same for you, but when things happen, instead of automatically being like, woe is me, like because it's been so intentional, or so in front of me for such a long time, I still have struggle where inside I'll be like, shit, that sucks. But instead of letting my actions be dictated by that, my brain just quickly is like, there's worse things, or you've already gone through this or that, or whatever. So now it's become a lot easier, but it definitely had to be top of mind for a long time. Would you feel like it's kind of the same?
Oh, for sure. With last year being probably the most challenging year of my life, personally and emotionally, and so many factors. I remember because of having this as a practice for 20 years, it being such a, I don't want to say easy to shit, but like I had the tools. And even when I was like, oh my God, why am I going through this? It was like, no, because this is part of my journey, because this is part of my story. And I kept saying, I'm like, this is part of your expansion. And I kept seeing visions. And I told my husband, it just sucks so bad, but I know that this is part of like our growth journey. I know that we're going to be talking about this on stage in years to come, and what happened, after this process, right? Like you see so many multi billionaires and they have a story where they lost everything and they had to restart. And that's basically what happened to us, right? But just the power that came from that, right? And like the mental fortitude and the experience, the lessons, the connections. I also met some of the most unbelievable humans I've ever met in my life last year. More humans in one year, right? Like I always find like I meet incredible people at different times of my life that I've met. I don't know that I've ever met, I couldn't even say I met one per year, in my life, but I've like, there's been years where I'm like, oh, I met this person, or I met Katie, or I met you, like just people that were just like someone that I was going to have in my life forever. And last year, I can spit off at least 5 people that came into my world that are integral. I know have already been and shown, and I know will be integral parts of my life moving forward, that I would have never met had this not happened, had I not gone, because I went into silence. I went to a silent retreat and I was like, I just need to like go in. And I did that last year. And through that process was connected to just some of the most amazing souls. So like, had I not had the decades prior and like had been reading and knowing this, I don't know that I would have leaned in as much, knowing like I just need a pause. I need to go inward. I know that everything is working out for me. I know that everything will grow me if I choose it to grow me. And I need to be finding the lessons in all of this. And even
Mhm.
like a coach, a guide of mine was like, what's the lesson in this? We had a shady contractor that lied and stole a couple $100,000. She's like, what's the lesson? I'm like, what do you mean? What's the lesson? Don't trust people? That's not a good lesson. And it was like, no, what are you learning? What are you, and just really diving in. And it's a different way of approaching life. And
Yeah.
so even though there were the days that were really tough, it was still like, I know that this is grooming me. I know that this is an expansion year. I know that there are some big freaking things on the horizon that I need to be more like have a bigger capacity for. Right. And so that was huge. But I think for me, in terms of personal growth and development, when it started with audiobooks, I loved, I actually had some version of like a minute with Maxwell. I don't know what it was. It was like a daily reader, right? That I had like
Mhm.
a 65 days or something.
The
Uh,
older version, the book
yeah.
version.
But I remember, yeah, before he started doing the videos, the book. But I remember I was at some kind of a sales training, right? And they had played something about Tony Robbins and like some kind of a mindset thing. And I was like, wow, this is really interesting. And I had a mentor that said, read this book. And this was the book that really catapulted personal growth and development for me, was Brian Tracy's Maximum Achievement, which you've heard me talk about for decades. And that was the first book where when I read it, I was like, oh my gosh, I never thought about this, or I never put this type of language to this, right? And it really like opened my eyes and made me like so hungry to like know more and learn, be more self-aware, and really take more ownership in terms of what was happening in my world because of I was focusing on, what was I feeding my brain, what was I doing stuff. And like, I would have never thought about that. I'd have been like, this is just my life. This is what it is, right? I wouldn't have thought about what was shaping and molding where I was going based on what I was putting in. And so I think that's a really important thing for anyone who's maybe you haven't heard of it, maybe you're diving into it, maybe you want to grow and be better. But when we think about unleashing your greatness, right? And like what this podcast is all about with Goals and Greatness Unleashed, like, are you reading? And I'd love any books that you loved. That was one for me, Maximum Achievement. And then Waking the Giant Within from Tony Robbins was awesome. And I mean, there's so many different books I've read now since
So
then.
many, so many. Like
There's so many.
I can't even begin. There's just so many amazing books out there. I'll mention John Maxwell was like probably pivotal in it, and it's again because of the language. Like he
Right.
didn't use words that I had like never heard before. He made it very easy to read, and he has like so many books. So I even get the titles confused because he has like the 15 irrefutable laws of leadership. Then he has like 10 something else that's also leadership. So I think it's also just finding, some authors that maybe their values line up with yours and you like the way that they deliver information. At the end of the day, if what somebody's teaching is helping move you forward, then maybe follow that. And it's not about adopting every aspect of somebody's life, but taking whatever philosophy you feel is true to you and true to your journey, and like using that to help you create action. So like the best way that I could explain is that it's not supposed to be like a script or exact guide on how you should live your life, but are the principles something you agree with? Whatever helps you decide things, whatever compass you have is like, does somebody say something and you're like, oh, I agree with that, and then you pursue that thought, and then if you feel like it makes you better, that's personal growth. It's going to look different for each of us based on what we value and we see to be good, right, and true. So
is there, and the answer might be no, it might have just been like listening to those videos, but is there a book, if someone was coming to you and say, I really want to start on this journey of personal development and growth, right? Is there any recommendation that you would give in terms of, I think that this is a great starting place and roll from here? Is there anything, whether it's a course, a seminar, a book, because it could be something simple, right? Like maybe someone's tighter on the budget. So it's like, I can't go to this $1,000 seminar or whatever yet, right? But making that a goal. But where somewhere, just anything that you feel was helpful for you that you would share in general, or the more specific, the better.
yeah, I would say that's tough because before I would definitely have just pointed to why I feel like The Four Agreements is a really great book. That was actually one of the first ones that I read. That was really great because it's so basic, yet you could like take it in so many directions. So that would be the number one I'd recommend. What about you?
It's so foundational and so like life-changing at the same time, but it's like such basic
Yeah.
principles, right? You're like, duh, like how
Right.
this isn't anything crazy, but it's like, man, if we really live by those four agreements, like how life-changing that is. I had thought about different books and stuff recommending. I was talking to someone the other day and they asked me like, oh, what do you think I should start with first? And I said, honestly, I would actually start with the Miracle Morning at this point. Like this didn't
Oh,
exist back then. And Hal has a new I actually interviewed him. If you haven't heard that, go back and listen to that. But I would start with Hal's book, his new version of the Miracle Morning, his new edition. And the reason why is that part of personal growth practices, like one, we've been talking about the continuous learning aspect, right? And so the reading, the attending workshops or seminars, which I'd love to talk about some of the most impactful ones of that, and like seeking out new experiences. But another big factor is the self-reflection aspect, right? And so things like journaling, meditating, recalibrating goals, things like that. And so what Hal did is that he studied all of the greats and all of like their habit formation and all of their personal growth and development. To what did they do to be at their best, to show up at their best, to keep improving? Like, what are the things they were doing? And he realized like he was trying to find the one or two things. And he's like, I kept finding these things, but found that there were really six things that really elevated people personally, professionally, just in their life, like just as humans. And it was like the silence and meditation, and whether that's prayer or excuse me, sitting in silence, or it's praying, reading your Bible, whatever it was that just like quieted your mind, right? Maybe it's like chants. I was listening to something with like a yen yoga and just learning more about like how to be still, right? That's a big focus of mine this year, is like, how can I be more than do, right? And really looking at that. But so that practice is there, right there. And then that is training our language, right? And what we're saying to ourselves and what we're feeding our mind and what we want our mind focusing, right? We're intentionally putting that lens on our eyes, our affirmations of who we want to be, where we want to go, what we want to attract more of, what path we're on. And so it has that. And then he talks about the visualization, right? And we know the power of that in terms of personal achievement and forward movement, right? We're talking about moving forward as a person. And so, visualizing where we want to be, where we want to go, who we want to be. And so we're being intentional about our growth versus stagnation, right? And then the E, he talks about exercise, and like that's just so huge, because your physical body, your health, your energy to show up in the things that you want to do in the world, to have, the energy to do this or do that, play with the kids, go on this trip around the world, or whatever it is, like what are we doing? And but also with exercise, there's so many things you're releasing, right? And like the serotonin and this and that and all these different hormones that are so positive and help us show up happier and more fulfilled, right? And so there's so much that goes into that, and you can dig in and read about it, right? He like really dives in the book. And he talks about reading, right? And we're talking about reading. And so he talks about that, and he'll suggest some of the books he has. In my book, I suggest different books that were helpful for me, but there's so many incredible books out there. But can you read for 10 minutes a day or 10 pages a day, or put on an audiobook? If you're like, I just don't like my brother, sorry, Josh, throwing you out there. He does not like to read paper books. He's like, I can't sit and just do that, but he loves audiobooks. I mean, he is so hungry to learn since he went to Tony Robbins back in 2008. He's just been like a sponge. I want to grow, I want to learn. And he's constantly listening to stuff. He's gardening, listening to a podcast. He's driving, he's listening to a book, but he's always wanting to learn. So whatever version that is for you, you're doing that. And then he talks about scribing, right? And he used that word, so it would be savers, because that was what saved his life. And the S being, that scribing being journaling, right? And the power of journaling and getting thoughts out. And because as humans, we can reflect, right? We can self-reflect, and we can look, and we can also go back and look at old entries and be like, oh, wow, look at where I've grown, look at where I've evolved, right? So that's why I would recommend, sorry, it was a long explanation, but that's why I'd recommend that book first, because it brings to light and brings up like all the practices that are like, those are personal growth practices. When you research what are the best practices, like, it encompasses these things. So if you can create a daily ritual, and he even has, I don't know if it's like a 6-minute or a 10-minute miracle morning, where like, even if you just did it for 10 minutes a day, just like the progress you're going to see in your life, because you'll be more comfortable stepping out of your comfort zone. You'll be more comfortable trying new activities, taking on challenges, sorry, embracing opportunities for personal and professional development. So I think that was really huge. I wish I would have had that
No, I
20
like what you
years
said
ago.
about the self-reflection, and you can look back, because I feel like some of the best guru for you is actually yourself, because you understand that you have so much more in you. And if you don't, like, allow me to tell you that you do. And so by having that self-awareness to see where you actually are, and it's like we always tell people, I've heard this before, it's like, can you just get a little bit better every day? And if you look at it like that, it gives you the space to also give yourself grace, where you're not like, trying to be perfect all the time, but at the same time, you're focused on being better. So, even if it's just taking 20 seconds at the end of the day to be like, what did I do that totally sucked today? And if the same situation happened tomorrow, not how can I be perfect, but how can I just be 1% better than I was the day before, then, you're starting to get somewhere, right? So you seeking outside help or videos or gurus or books or whatever is because there's people that have already been on these journeys for a long time. And it's almost like, well, if I can just pull from people's stories and experiences and what they've seen, or like Hal studied all these people, like, I'm not going to go and take the time to do that, but he did, then you can learn quicker. But don't lose the power of that self-examination and that process either, because that's so huge. And yeah, I mean, all that stuff that you said is all, those are all things that help move people forward. Exercise,
Right.
reading, journaling. I used to journal a whole bunch. I don't as much anymore, but I remember I used to fill up so many books every single year, just like, and I still have them. Like, I've looked at things from my earlier years as a manager in Cutco, and I just laugh. It's like a cringe laugh. I'm like, oh, that's so cringy, but I'm glad I'm not like that anymore.
Yeah. And again, all these things, like you were saying, the exercise, the right, go back to the beginning when you said, what is personal development, right? And it's the
Right.
ongoing process of self-improvement. You're improving yourself physically, you're improving yourself mentally, you're improving yourself emotionally, you're improving yourself hopefully spiritually. And spiritually can be whatever you want it to mean, whether it's connection with the earth, with Mother Earth, with God, with whoever is your God, whatever it might be. But just knowing that there's something bigger than you, like all these things, by having these practices in place, you're able to really shift and continue on that process of self-improvement.
Mhm.
And so what are some of your favorite, this is my last question I have for you. I was going to make it I'm like, it's not quirky though, so you can ask what you want. But last question I have is, what are any, if someone is actually looking at, so one, by the way, if you're like, I don't have money for, like, you don't need a bunch of money. By the way, there are apps right now that are like libraries, like a library card, and you could rent out books and you could read stuff. So you could actually get free books online. So research that. I know I had a friend share that with me, and I need to find it so we can post it in the show notes. But I know that you can read books for free, even online, or go to your local library, guys. Go check out, Tony Robbins, and like, so you're not paying money to buy the book. So if you're on a super tight budget, rent it, go to the library, start there. YouTube, okay? Like, this didn't exist when I was 19. And I mean, the internet had just come out, like, back in 2000. So you have so much freaking free knowledge,
Spotify has the free audiobooks.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So like, just go in, get curious. And so again, some of the authors we've shared that we like, Jack Canfield, and these are the more old school, John Maxwell, Brian Tracy, Tony Robbins, who's still super relevant today. But now there's like Jay Shetty, someone I'm following now. And I just love how he shows up and what he's about. And I want that just stillness inside, regardless of what's happening outside, without having to go to a monastery. Right. So I'm looking at that. But, research, like top people in personal development, Hal Elrod, you can follow him and listen to him. And so there's so much on YouTube, so much on Spotify, like just so much out there. Dig in, start dedicating time every day for yourself, even if it's just 10 minutes. But, can you build that to more, to honor yourself? Make sure that you keep growing, because you're going to just show up differently, and you're going to attract so many beautiful things into your life, and you're going to have more joy and more fulfillment. And isn't that what we all want? Right. But I would say there's something really special about those live events.
Oh
And
yeah.
I would make that a goal if you've never been to one, or if you're like, I don't have the funds for it yet, say the word yet, make a plan and say, okay, within a year, I will go to my first conference and check out pricing. Some are in the 500 range, some are in the 1,000. Tony offers in that price range, and he also offers Date with Destiny that can be 6 to 10 grand, which was
You can
the
even
best
do
thing I've ever been.
UPW online now for like $3.99.
Awesome. And everyone who's attended it online, because I was like, I don't know about that. Like, my friends have said, like, it was amazing. They did it. It was more fun if they had a couple friends together with them, because they're jumping up and down, high-fiving, doing all the things. But if you're not like, I will say this, if you're someone who's more reserved, more introvert, whatever, Tony can be a lot maybe for the first event. I would recommend Landmark Education, because a lot of the principles are very similar, but Landmark is a lot more just logical and teaching and going through processes and different exercises. It's not a like rah-rah. Tony does a lot of rah-rah, but also his content is unbelievable. But just know that. So if you're going to a Tony event as your first thing, just know that there's going to be a lot of high-fiving, jumping around, yelling, screaming. And he's just, that's a process that he uses and there's psychology behind that. And if that's like a little bit too uncomfortable at first, start with something more like Landmark. I highly recommend Landmark Education. And it's all about self-awareness and really understanding why you are the way you are, what's gotten you to where you are now, to really give you that power to know that you can create anything that you want in the future. And there's some incredible exercises. And so I always recommend that to people. But those are some of my favorites. I don't know any of the ones you would refer. And then one day Get to Date with Destiny, because that was like
I
freaking
want to do that one day.
you still need to do that. Yeah, it is just wow. It was unreal. I need to do it
No,
again.
I would agree with everything that you mentioned. I mean, again, like, I started learning all this stuff. Like I said, whisperings before, but when I first started learning about personal development was under your organization. So I listened to a lot of the same stuff. But okay, so quirky question of the week. If you had any other final thoughts or
I'm good.
Toto
We'll
so
keep
okay.
diving into this stuff through the weeks, but I think we're good for today.
So we're foodies, but we really haven't talked that much about food, actually. Favorite cuisine. I already know the answer already, but
No, I
oh,
don't
oh
know
my.
anymore because someone asked me today if you could just eat one thing. I don't know. I think pregnancy's changed me. I love Mexican, I love Italian, and I love Asian food, all sorts, and I can't pick. I'm having a really hard time. What were you gonna say for me? I want to know.
I was gonna say Mexican.
Yeah, I'm like, I think pregnancy, I mean, I always, because even when I was doing all the plant-based and like vegan food, it was a lot of Italian food. You made me Mexican, which I love. But I was doing like different pastas with like noodles and like my vodka sauce with
Yeah.
cashew, like I really enjoy Italian food, but I never ate a lot of it because of all the carbs in the pasta. And then when I figured out alternatives, I ate more and more of it. And then being pregnant, I didn't give two craps. I just ate it all. But yeah, anyway. And then, I love sushi and I love a good Chinese food and I love a good Thai and I love food.
I
Anyway,
mean, I love everything, but if you put a plate of Lebanese food in front of me any day, all 3 meals, I could devour that. So it could be, I could eat that any time of the day. That could be my midnight snack. I could eat that like 7 a.m. if that's when I was having breakfast. I don't know, but yeah, I could eat that nonstop. But I would say a close second to that would be like Asian cuisine because I mean, there's so many different kinds, but like, I love a good sushi night. I mean, noodles, Asian noodles, all that stuff totally
Good.
hits that spot. So
Very important to your personal growth and development, y'all.
for real. And we're going to be diving into cuisine next. No, I'm just kidding. But we're going to be diving into more personal growth subtopics in the next coming weeks that we're really excited to talk about. Kathy always says, make sure you like, subscribe, share with your friends, share
All
with
the
your
things.
family, tell a stranger, whisper it into the person next to his ear, whatever you got to do.
We love it. We wish you guys a kick-ass week. We'll see you next week.